We would like to first thank our sponsor for this debate, AARP Nebraska. We will give equal time to each candidate. We're asking you both to keep your answers to no more than 60 seconds. And when I ask you to move on, please do so. In addition, we reserve the right to follow up. We also want to give the candidates a chance to respond if you are directly criticized by your opponent. So without further ado, let's get started. And Mayor Stothert, we will start with you on leading the city. You've been in office 8 years and are seeking an unprecedented third term as mayor. What have you accomplished as mayor to convince those in Omaha that you deserve another term in office?
Thank you. First of all, I love my job. I love going to work every day. And we had a goal. We started 8 years ago with a plan to make the city safer, to manage the city budget wisely, to increase economic development and create jobs, and to improve the taxpayer experience. And I think we have had successes in all of those areas. I want to continue with the great partnerships that we have developed with businesses and citizens and people all over Omaha to make Omaha better. We work together, and that's how we get things done in Omaha. Omaha Together is the theme and the motto of my campaign, and I want to keep on working in this position to make sure that we keep moving in the right direction.
All right, Mr. Neary, this next one is for you. You have no elected experience in office, and the person you're running against has 12 years in City Hall combined. How can Omahans trust you to lead a growing city government and all the departments that come with it, despite your lack of elected experience?
Well, thank you, John, for that question, and thank you, AARP. Thank you, Mayor, for for your time as a public servant and another robust discussion on the issues that face Omaha. I spent 40 years in business, and I spent 10 years on the planning board, so I have experience in dealing in City Hall through my 40 years of commercial real estate experience, and I have the knowledge, the skills, and the expertise to run this city. And I've led teams, and I've motivated people, and made company after company a better place. And I have the experience in doing projects that have made a difference to our community, and I've always been involved in our communities since I was a younger person, and I can do this for the city of Omaha going forward. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Neary, we are going to keep with you on this next question regarding COVID. You have campaigned on hiring a COVID czar to help get the city through the remainder of the pandemic. Now, by the time you would get into office and have the time to hire this person, many residents of Omaha will be vaccinated, and we may no longer even have a mask mandate. So what will be the purpose of this COVID czar, and will their skill set be more on the economic or medical side?
Thank you for that question. I have a whole COVID reset plan, John, and we are not out of this yet, and our economy, we do not know how things are going to reset. Companies are experimenting with hybrid, and there's a lot more office space on the market than there used to be, and that impacts a lot of businesses and public health and our public health agencies. And I just saw where 8% of the people that got the first shot have not gotten the second shot, and they've skipped their appointments. We have to get people vaccinated, and we have to make sure we come out of this pandemic stronger than ever, and we need somebody paying full attention and coordinate all these activities. We have another College World Series that's only 50% occupancy, and we've missed a second Berkshire halfway meeting, so there are real economic impacts to this.
Okay, Mayor Stothert, you have said that we don't need a COVID czar. In your opinion, why is this a bad idea?
Well, as mayor, I took that responsibility as navigating and leading the city through the pandemic, and I worked very closely with the Director of Public Health, Dr. Poor, who during a pandemic, according to city policy, becomes the City of Omaha's Public Health Director. We work very closely together with the experts at Nebraska Medicine. Dr. Poor and I did over 30 television statements about what we were going to do to lead the citizens through this. We are not through it yet. We still have a lot to navigate through. It's still unclear with what the budget will be, but I think it's very important that the mayor takes a responsibility and works very directly with the Director of Public Health as we continue to navigate through the pandemic. A czar is just something that will cost more money and is unneeded at this time.
Okay, Mayor Stothert, we're going to keep with you, switch gears a little bit though, as you defended Omaha police actions against complaints by protesters. So my question is, why should any Omaha resident concerned about police believe that your city takes citizen complaints about police conduct seriously?
You know, we have a very excellent police department. I work very closely with Chief Schmatter. He has won great respect in the community. There's a great amount of trust between the community and our police department. We feel very close. I feel very strongly that we have a very good police department, but we are always looking at ways to make it better. After the protests last summer, Chief Schmatter and I had many conversations about it. I asked for a complete report on the protests and the riots that we had. He compiled that. We looked at thousands of hours of video camera. We looked at live link video, and he prepared a report for me so that we could deal with issues that we felt like how we could perform and we could be better. I will tell you this, I strongly feel like our community trusts our police department. They trust a lot of the actions that they have taken. And we, Chief Schmatter and I, our goal is to only make a very good police department better.
Okay, Mr. Neary, similar topic, but slightly different question. You adopted the police reform plan of one of your primary opponents, Jasmine Harris. So if you believe in this issue so strongly, why didn't you propose it to begin with, and what specifically changed?
I've always had a public safety plan where we would innovate and get better. I've been on Mayors for Innovation Zoom calls, and I've always promoted the Albuquerque, where we have a plan where we have more social services, and I've seen example after example of that. I've seen a police officer just the other day dealing with a homeless person. I have great respect for our police force, and I back the police force, but we ask too much of them, and we can save money and we can solve problems like these social service issues, and make our police force that much better. The other thing that's changed is that not everybody feels safe in Omaha. I know some of the media were mistreated at the protest last year.
Okay, I guess, can you get into exactly why you decided to go a step further though, Mr. Neary, and adopt Jasmine Harris's plan?
Well, Jasmine's a very wise person when it comes to these issues, and she serves on a nonprofit where she has a lot of community leaders trying to solve problems of reentry and prison reform, and she's more knowledgeable maybe than I am on that expertise, and I've adopted her plan, and it makes sense to me. I think we need to build trust throughout the community, and that's what that plan will do.
Okay, and I'm going to keep with you, Mr. Neary. This is also on the similar subject of police. The city had last had a police auditor in 2006 when Mayor Mike Fahey fired the auditor. Now, nobody was ever rehired. If you were to become mayor, would you consider rehiring one, and why so?
Yes, I would, because I think we're in a time period that we need that trust of a police auditor. We had some issues during the protest. We've had issues recently with the body cam. And I've learned that not everybody feels safe. And if we're going to solve this problem, it can't be just one-sided, and it can't be that it really takes the pressure off of other people when you have an auditor that can look into these things. And we had a lot of discussion about a lot of police issues this year. And when you have an auditor, you have a spokesperson that's neutral on this, and we'll look into it and make sure everybody feels safe.
Okay, Mayor Stothert, in your first run for mayor, you campaigned and said that we don't need to rehire an auditor. But because everything that happened in this last year, has your opinion on this changed at all?
No, it hasn't changed at all. And I will say this, to defund or disassemble the police, before you have any social programs and can prove that they work, is reckless and irresponsible, and that is something that I will not do. I truly believe in the Citizen Complaint Review Board, which I created by executive order rather than one police auditor. Number one, a police auditor will cost the taxpayers money. These are volunteers with the CCRB, or Citizen Complaint Review Board. But this is a panel of citizens that look at complaints against our police officers. I have just recently amended that executive order so people can make complaints directly to the CCRB. And I have asked them to do a report every year, an annual report that I will release to the public. I think that that is the best way to oversee police and their conduct, but I will say they don't receive many complaints. We do not have many complaints against our police officers in the city of Omaha for misconduct. But I think this panel that we have assembled of citizens is the best route to go.
Okay, Mayor Stothert, we're going to keep with you for the next one. And this one comes from our partners at AARP, and it's on the issue of public transportation. Yes. Mayor, what is your strategy to make transit a practical, daily option for a wide range of city residents and to assure it will be accessible for everybody?
As a growing city that we are, and a dynamic city we need multiple modes of transportation. We need an efficient, dependable transportation system that works for everyone. When I first became mayor, we worked very, very carefully with Metro Transit and the U.S. Department of Transportation to get the funding for the Orbit, the BRT that we now have running from 10th Street on the east side all the way out to West Roads on the west side. You have to look at that as an initial route or an initial spine where multiple routes from the north, south, and west will tie in the future. We also have multiple bus stations or nodes along Dodge Street to make it more convenient for everybody to use that form of transit. But we need to look at all forms of mobility, the way people commute, whether it's walking, bikes, public transportation, automobiles. And the one thing that I did that I felt was fundamental for everything as far as transportation goes is the bond issue that we passed for our roads. We had to fix our roads first. And with the passage of the bond issue, now I think it makes it easier for us to look at multiple different forms of other transportation, but it's important for everybody to have a form of transportation that works for everybody and is accessible and easy.
Okay, Mr. Neary, same question. I'll repeat it for you. What is your strategy to make transit a practical daily option for a wide range of city residents, as well as to assure it will be accessible for everybody?
Thank you, John. I've had a transit plan from early on, and I've been on the transit boards and the TOD committee, and I've watched this in multiple cities. And we have tapped the brakes on our transit system, and we need to move ahead. A car costs $8,000 to $10,000 for people to operate, according to AAA these days, and we have too many people spending too much of their income on transportation. And when I'm mayor, we'll have a transportation system where everybody can get to the doctor, to the grocery store, and to work. We need to connect people from their home to their jobs, and we need a much more robust transportation system in our city. Kansas City built their first spine, had $2 billion worth of development. They're building their second, and they expect $2 billion more. We're late on this, and we need to get forward.
Okay, Mayor Stothert mentioned roads. This actually one is for Mr. Neary, but we'll hit on roads a little bit because Mr. Neary, you have said that the city's problems with roads could be solved by using better design, better companies, and even better material. Mayor Stothert has dismissed such talk as ill-informed. Why is she wrong?
My streets plan is to fix the streets and fix them right. We're caught in this pothole patch that keeps reoccurring. And I've talked to the engineers and I've talked to the contractors. I believe, and this is why I've talked to them, I believe we have to do better. And I've talked to people that actually build parking lots, and they said, we agree, something's not right. And I think we need to step up our standards on streets and our mixes, and I'll form a committee and we'll get this figured out and quit wasteful spending and get our streets built right.
Okay, Mayor Stothert, similar question. What do you think of Mr. Neary's criticism of your handling of city streets?
Well, you know, I think that I don't talk to people that fix parking lots or build parking lots. I talk to people that build roads. And I assembled several years ago some of the best experts in the world, engineers, to help me determine why our roads look the way they do, what we need to do to fix them, how much it's going to cost, and how we're going to pay for it. And with that, we came up with the $200 million bond issue. What we found out is we need to be spending about $75 million a year on our roads for reconstructing and resurfacing. We were spending $41 million a year, and we had a $34 million gap. With this bond issue, we will be able to resurface twice as many roads as we had in the past, and we've already started doing that. That is the permanent solution. Yes, we're chasing our tails fixing potholes, but you have to fix the potholes when they happen to prevent people from damaging their cars. This bond issue, it's a permanent solution. We will either resurface or reconstruct roads, and we will never be in that position again that the roads have deteriorated so much that you can't even fix a pothole. This is the permanent solution, and it was developed with the experts in the field, the engineers in the field, and we are using best practices that Public Works uses all over the country.
Hi, Mr. Neary, she did criticize you a little bit in that opening, so you have a 30-second rebuttal if you want it.
The state of Iowa and the state of Nebraska use a different mix, but this bond issue is a 20-year pay on 5 years, and we have to do another one in the next 5 years. This has been an ongoing issue of not fixing our streets right, and we need somebody that takes control of this and gets it done right.
Okay. Mayor Stothert, this next one is for you. And as you mentioned, Omaha voters just approved a $200 million street bond and could potentially need another one to catch up on road maintenance. Now, many of Omaha's daily drivers live outside city limits. What role, if any, do you think commuters should play in the funding of city streets, and how would you achieve it?
Well, but by law, we can't tax people that don't live within the city of Omaha. They tried a commuter wheel tax when I was first on the city council, and that was found to be unlawful. The thing that we need to do is, like I said before, is fix our streets permanently. We have about 5,000 lane miles of road within the city of Omaha, and they have been underfunded for a good 5 decades. I'd say a good 50 years. With this bond issue passing, we normally can resurface with the money we had coming in before, primarily from the state gas tax and the wheel tax, about 125 lane miles a year. We are now able to resurface 250 lane miles a year. What that means with our 5,000 lane miles we had in Omaha is once every 20 years, every street in Omaha can be resurfaced and touched. That's the permanent way to fix our roads. And this bond issue was passed overwhelmingly by our voters in the middle of a pandemic. And we can't find any city in the country that passed such a big public works bond issue during the pandemic as we did here in Omaha. The citizens care, and the citizens believe what we were telling them, that this was the best solution.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Neary, what role, if any, do you think commuters should play in the funding of city streets, and how could you possibly achieve that?
We've, during this administration, which has been 8 years and still doesn't fix the streets right, we have annexed hundreds of miles of streets, and I propose that we do not annex any more streets until we fix our streets and fix them right. And that's as simple as that, and that's what I'll do.
Mayor, he did criticize you. You have a 30-second rebuttal if you want it.
Yes, and we carefully, strategically annex the city, and annexing the city is good for the entire city, and it's good for the roads too, because when we annex, we assume their property tax, their sales tax, their occupation tax. If you really want to lower taxes, you broaden the tax base. That's exactly what we are doing. When we annex, we know the lane miles of road in the area that we are going to annex. We understand the condition of the roads. If those roads are in bad condition, we don't annex. But when that extra revenue comes in for those areas that are annexed, it's very beneficial for the entire city. And that's why we have been able to do so many of the things that we have been able to do, because we are broadening the tax base. Annexation is good for the entire city, and we do it very carefully.
And we will get to annexations in a bit here. This next question is for Mr. Neary, and it comes from, again, our friends with the AARP. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, over the next decade, the percentage of people over 65 will grow more than any other age demographic. What do you propose to see our city grow, develop, and redevelop in a way that addresses the specific needs and desires of Omahans over 65?
It is very important how we develop, and we need an urban core that competes with the suburbs. And I've spent 40 years of my life developing neighborhoods and recreating neighborhoods, and we need a vision that does go forward more than the next election. We need somebody with a vision of for the next generation. And that's what I'll do, of creating neighborhoods that are thriving and mixed use. And we have a lot of older neighborhoods that need attention and need momentum. And that's what in my neighborhoods plan is reusing existing houses, existing buildings, and making things happen. And we need more opportunities downtown in our urban core where we can do infill and fill in more housing. And we need ARP's got a lot of information on multiple types of housing, and that's what I'll do.
Mayor Stothert, same question. What do you propose to see our city grow, develop, and redevelop in a way that addresses the specific needs and desires of Omahans over 65?
Sure. It has to be a combination between urban redevelopment and suburban growth, and that is exactly what we are doing in Omaha. If you look all the way at 10th Street to the Missouri River, all the way out to Elkhorn, you see development occurring all the time. We need a combination of the type of housing that we are building, from high-end to affordable housing. We need multiple modes of transportation. We need to offer the amenities that people are looking for in those areas that we're developing, such as retail, entertainment, public spaces, walkability, connectivity. All of those things are in our city plan, our master plan. All of those things are what we look at as we continue to develop. The Urban Core Committee, which we developed and established, covers an area in our urban core from Cumming down to Leavenworth and from 10th Street out to Saddle Creek. That is defined as our urban core, and we did that so that we can have a coordinated plan of what we want to do in that area, in our urban core, and to attract more people, more residents, and more business in those areas. So it's a combination of what we are doing all over Omaha. It's suburban redevelopment, or suburban growth, and urban redevelopment.
Okay, Mayor Stothert, you also have this next question. Now, I don't think anybody would argue that there's no silver bullet to lift up the North Omaha community and drastically reduce poverty in that area. So my question is, what type of long-term goal-oriented vision do you have for that specific community that incorporates jobs, affordable housing, and crime reduction?
Well, you know, if you look at Northeast Omaha right now, you can see absolute tremendous growth that we have achieved in the last 8 years. Look at North 30th Street, the amazing amount of development that has happened there. Look at 24th Street. We've created the first BID in that area so that citizens in that area can have a voice and they're able to say what they want to see in their community. We give a lot of city dollars to Heartland Workforce Solution, for example, and that is a one-stop shop that people can go in and learn anything from how to apply for a job, how to do a resume, how to get the skills for the jobs that are out there. We give money to the Empowerment Network to employ youth during the summer. We have a plan now that's called A Way to Work to give our homeless jobs, and working with our partner with the Salvation Army. If you look at the amount of road work that we are doing all over our city, the oldest parts of the city get the most road work because that's where the need is the most. And so I think that we have seen a tremendous amount of growth in Northeast Omaha and Southeast Omaha, and I think it's a lot because of the great partnerships that we have formed with our citizens in those areas.
Okay, Mr. Neary, same question to you. What type of long-term goal-oriented vision do you have for the North Omaha community that incorporates jobs, affordable housing, and crime reduction?
I have spent 40 years working on housing, and I'm passionate about housing. I was one of the first board members of Habitat for Humanity here in Omaha, and I've been involved in several thousand apartment projects and units in downtown Omaha and in North and South Omaha. And I think too often we have people or politicians come in and say, we've got big plans and we're going to spend all this money, and we have to use what's there. There are a lot of buildings that need investment, and there's people, we need to create jobs within the community, and we need to let the community leaders do it. 76% of the people that live in poverty live in substandard housing in our community. And I don't think it's right, and we ought to get it fixed. And when I'm mayor, we'll get it fixed.
Okay, thank you to both of our candidates. We are about halfway through this debate. We're going to take a short break, and when we return, each candidate will get the opportunity to ask their challenger a question. Welcome back. Both candidates have agreed to ask one another one question. They each get 1 minute to answer. Mr. Neary, you have the opportunity to ask the first question to Mayor Stothert.
Mayor, the head of the Omaha Police Officers Association recently said on TV that if we can't recruit, that there will be more police shootings. Where do you stand on that statement and as one of your advocates for your campaign?
Well, you know, to say that if we can't recruit, there would be more shootings. I believe what Mr. Connor was referring to is our pool that we have of people that are applying for jobs in the Omaha Police Department has decreased over the last year. That wasn't unusual throughout the entire country when there is civil unrest and protests going on. Especially when there's such a movement to defund and disassemble police departments. What we want is a broad pool, a diverse pool of applicants into our police department so that we can have a diverse police department that represents our community the best. And I think that we will have that. We're going to have one of our biggest classes ever coming up soon, and we will get back into our budgeted numbers. And the budgeted numbers that we have seen tremendous decrease in crime.
Okay, Mayor Stothert, now you have an opportunity to ask Mr. Neary a question.
Well, I'll stay on the lines of police. About 8 years ago, Chief Schmatter and I developed a very strategic plan to add 100 more police officers over a several-year period. We did that based on something that we would call the gold standard. Do you think, Mr. Neary, that number of adding 100 new police officers was sufficient, was the right amount? Do you think it's too much, too little? And if you don't agree with what we did, what is the number that you would have picked, and why would you have picked that number?
My policing plan wants to make the best use of our resources that we can. And I'm told that we have 902 funded officers, but we still don't have enough officers on the street, and that we have more too many in administration. I will look into that when I'm mayor, and we'll decide what the right number of officers are. Our crime is still up, and obviously we're not getting the job done, and more officers isn't necessarily the answer.
Okay. Moving along, and we're going to hit on the restaurant tax now. As you know, and this one is actually for Mr. Neary. As you know, the city passed the restaurant tax in 2013. At the time, it was labeled temporary, but since then, we've seen other cities like La Vista and Ralston adopt a similar tax, and Omaha still has their restaurant tax. So, Mr. Neary, is it time to finally repeal the restaurant tax?
I don't believe that the city can repeal the restaurant tax, but the restaurant tax itself has increased in the last 8 years $49 million, and we've claimed to have a balanced budget, but we claim not to want the restaurant tax in this administration, but we haven't saved $49 million, or we haven't put $49 million away. So I don't know, and we haven't solved the firefighters and the police pension, which was what part of that money was supposed to go to. And when I talk to taxpayers, they say that they want value, and they want decent streets, and they want their garbage hauled, and they want recycling done, and that's what they want when they pay these taxes.
Okay, Mayor Stothert, a similar question. You said in a debate last election cycle that this was not a permanent tax. So given the troubles restaurants have faced in the last 13 months, is it finally time to repeal it?
Well, first of all, I want to say that crime is not up. I will say last year in 2020, crime was down 8.8%. This year, it is down 15% of violent crime. Now, as far as the restaurant tax goes, it was never meant to be temporary. It is an ordinance. The ordinance says nothing about being temporary at all. It's been in place almost 11 years now. It is estimated in 2020 budget to bring in about $33 million a year. All of that money goes into the general fund. It is not earmarked for anything. When it was originally put in place, we needed to add about $13 million more to the fire and police pension. That was going to bring in some extra revenue. And so that extra revenue was going to be used for the fire and police pension, but it all goes by law into the general fund. And the general fund funds everything. It funds it funds all of our city departments. It can't be earmarked to be used for one thing or another. And so that money goes and it helps every single city department. So we could say basically that we had a new trash contract that was just approved, said people want their trash picked up, and the reason we were able to put a new trash contract in place that was $10 million more a year than the previous one is because extra dollars are going into the general fund. So that occupation tax that the restaurant tax is, it's used to fund other departments too.
Mr. Neary, I will give you a 30-second rebuttal. She dismissed your statement on crime if you want the chance.
Well, I'd go to the Omaha World Herald article that said crime is up, and the mayor's admitted murders are up in 2020. And I think that's the facts. And you can debate them all day long, but those are the facts.
Okay, we will move along now. I promised we'd get to annexations, and we'll start with Mayor Stothert on this. Under your administration, the city has annexed over 8,000 acres and added 39,000 people in those annexations. So how aggressively would you pursue annexations going forward, and how can you ensure that future annexations will help the city and those future residents?
We very, very strategically plan our annexations every year. We're planning one for this summer too. When we do annexations, we start with every SID and every unincorporated area that we have, and we look at it over a 10-year period. We look at everything. We know the acres of parkland, we know the lane miles of road, we know the condition of the road, we know the sales tax, we know their debt, we know their assets. And if that package isn't net positive for the city over 10 years, we won't annex at that time. Since I have been mayor, I've been very aggressive at annexation because, as I stated before, when you broaden the tax base, it helps the entire city. That's why we have been able to do so many of the things we've done: hire new police officers, pass a new trash contract, do the things that we are doing in Omaha because more revenue is coming in because we've broadened the tax base. Annexation is done very, very carefully, very strategically, but it's good for the city and it's good for the entire city. So I will continue to annex.
Okay, Mr. Neary, you have said that you would pursue annexations differently than what we've seen with Mayor Stothert, and that you'd take a look at the entire process. So can you explain further on how you would consider future annexations?
What I learned on the 10 years of the planning board is that annexations of residential subdivisions, if you really pay attention to the streets and the condition of the infrastructure, you have to have some pretty good reserves in there to finance that. And cities all across America get into the habit of these annexations and trying to grow for growth's sake. And we already get the sales tax, and the mayor has touted lowering people's property taxes in those subdivisions. Well, the city is not that much more efficient where we can do it better than they can. And it's important that people realize that the real estate taxes, the city's part of that is very little part of it, yet we still have to provide garbage, police and fire, and street maintenance. And some of those subdivisions are almost 20 years old, and that's when those streets start to expire. And if you look at the aerial photographs, some of about a lot of them have high percentage of cement panels that have already been replaced, and you'll need to do the rest of it. So when I'm mayor, we won't be annexing these unless there's a return on investment to the existing taxpayers.
Mayor Stothert, a quick 30-second rebuttal if you want it.
Sure. Like I said before, we don't annex an area unless over a 10-year period it is net revenue positive or revenue neutral for the city. And we don't already get the taxes in those areas. We have a local option sales tax of 1.5%. And the state's taxes, sales tax, are 5.5%. So it's 7% total within the city limits. We don't get that local option of 1.5% if they are not annexed into the city. The state gets the state income tax. So again, we do this very carefully, very strategically, and we know everything about that area before we proceed and annex it. But it is good for the entire city when we bring the extra revenue in through annexation and grow the population.
Okay, moving along, this next one is for Mr. Neary. You have said that you think the city missed an opportunity with how it handled its most recent trash and recycling contract. What do you think the city should have done differently, and why?
The city services of garbage and recycling and yard waste, I've been told by voters that they have been so proud of Omaha Grow, and they want their yard waste not sent to the landfill where it causes methane gas and climate change. They want it recycled into Omaha Grow. And when we did that contract, we evidently didn't listen to the voters, because when I'm knocking doors and visiting with the voters out on the streets, they're telling me they aren't happy with the plan we have. And the recycling bins fill up faster than the garbage bins. And people have told me if I'll fix that, they'll vote for me. And that's what I'll do.
Mayor Stothert, why do you think he is wrong?
Well, you know, we worked very, very hard for years on a plan to understand the citizens' desire for what level of service they want for a new trash contract. And we did a pilot for 6 months in a certain area. We did surveys, we did town hall meetings, and we determined what this trash contract would be that would be deliver the best level of service at an amount that we can afford. Our recycling, since we have started our new program, has increased 55%. We were bringing in over 4,000 tons of recyclables, now over 7,000 tons of recyclables. What Mr. Neary was referring to was yard waste, and what we decided with the yard waste is to limit unlimited yard waste curbside year-round, but give unlimited yard waste in the spring and the fall in the times when there is the most yard waste. We still do make Omagrow, is what it is called, and that is the compost that we make and the mulch that we make from yard waste. But putting organics into the landfill and making methane, which we had the methane recapturing system out at our Douglas County landfill, is very positive too, because it's recaptured. We have an OPPD power plant out there, and we generate power from the methane gases that come from the landfill that are recaptured.
Mr. Neary, she did call you by your name. You have a 30-second rebuttal if you'd like.
I'm just telling you what the voters have told me. They want yard waste. They pay $10 million more. They pay good taxes. They want good service, and they are not happy with what they have.
Okay, this next one is from Mayor Stothert. Similar topic on recycling. Mayor, as you know, recycling costs are considerably higher than they were just a few years ago. How can the city keep up its recycling program and keeping citizens happy while also remaining fiscally responsible?
Because that's what I do. I mean, the budget is my responsibility. When I knew that we were going to have to pass a new trash contract for solid waste and for recyclables, I knew it was going to cost more. But by very careful budgeting, we were able to add a contract that would cost us $10 million more a year without raising taxes. The city is paying more money for this new contract, but the taxpayers did not have their taxes raised to do so. So it's a matter of very careful budget management. We just had a report from Public Works Director this morning, and it does cost more because we pay a tipping fee out at the landfill, and we are putting in more recyclables at our recycling plants that we have here in Omaha too. But again, it's a matter of very careful budgeting, and we can do that. And I will promise that I can do that and deliver to the citizens and the taxpayers.
Mr. Neary, same question. Recycling costs are going up, so how can you make sure the city keeps the recycling program while also remaining fiscally responsible?
I've been a passionate recycler all my life, and I've been to the recycling plant and figured out how to make this better with them as a partner, and we need the recycling company as a partner because we've had the market shrink, and we need to find ways to innovate and make better use of the materials we have. Lincoln has, I want to increase commercial recycling, and Lincoln has changed where all cardboard has to be recycled, and that was part of the Omaha by Design original conversation, but we haven't made any progress in doing that, and that's what I'll do when I'm mayor.
Okay, switching gears a little bit, Mr. Neary, we're going to keep on you on COVID in the budget. Last year we saw a budget shortfall of around $75 million, and while this year's budget is expected to be better, we still may not be out of the woods yet. My question to you, though, is how do you feel the mayor's office handled the budget during COVID, and do you think you would have done anything differently, and would you do anything differently going forward?
The COVID has decimated a lot of small businesses and a lot of entertainment districts, and that's part of my COVID reset plan, is to get our economy going again. And as we get more the new 118 million from the federal government, we need to spend that wisely. And what we've seen is how inequitable some things in our city are, is the broadband throughout a lot of neighborhoods has hurt children at school, and they've fallen behind, and we really have some catch up to do with our kids at school, and that's what I'll do with that 118 million, is multiple things, but that's one of the priorities.
Okay, Mayor Stothert, similar question. As you've said before, we had a budget shortfall of around $75 million. While it's expected to be better this year, it's unclear in exactly when things are going to be back to normal. Going forward, do you foresee any necessary cuts to ensure that city government can still pay their bills while delivering essential services to residents?
You know, back in March when COVID first hit, we had an estimate at that time of a $100 million shortfall. Worked very, very carefully with the state and with our finance director. We determined after the tax receipts started coming in, it was about a $75 million shortfall. I worked immediately and set some goals immediately and made some really, really tough decisions about the budget to decrease spending. I did a hiring freeze and a purchasing freeze. I closed the libraries, the community centers. We canceled summer camps. We made a lot of very, very tough decisions to navigate and get us through this pandemic, and we were able to do that without laying off any full-time people. And at the same time, at the end of the year, we actually had a budget surplus. I worked very hard with the state and with Douglas County to get CARES Act funding. That, in combination with the amount of money I cut out of the budget with reduced spending, we were able to navigate through the pandemic financially, and Omaha has fared very well compared to many other cities in the country, including ending the year with a surplus.
Okay, Mayor Stothert, we're going to stick with you. Very different subject matter, though, as this mayoral race came after a turbulent presidential election, to say the least, and some residents may be wary of engaging in politics so quickly after last year. Do you think it's a good idea for city elections to take place immediately after presidential elections, or would you like to see it change moving forward?
You know, we are required, the mayor is required to hold a city charter convention once every 10 years minimum, in a year that ends with 3. When I became mayor in 2013, I held a charter convention at that time. I will have to have another one by 2023. If I'm elected again, I'm going to start that early in 2022. One of the things that I recommended to the Charter Convention Committee, which they recommended to the City Council, was to change the time of elections. Typically, or all the time, by code and by city charter, that the city elections are independent. City council, 7 city council members, the mayor are all up at one time. The voter turnout is typically rather low. What I suggested is it happened to coincide with state elections on a non-presidential year. I think if we did that, it would increase voter turnout and it would decrease the cost to the city. Because we have sent out so many early ballots with this mayoral and city council race, sent out about 78,000, and that's going to increase the cost of this election. It could be north of $1 million. So for reasons of saving money, making it more efficient, and increasing the voter turnout, that is something that I already proposed, and I will do that again. I will say this, though, before it's put on a ballot, the city council has to vote to approve, and at that time in 2013, the city council denied my request to change when the city elections occur.
Mr. Neary, same question. Do you think it's a good idea for city elections to take place immediately after presidential elections, or would you like to see it changed?
I'd like to see it changed, and I think it would engage voters more, that it should be either with the presidential elections or the state elections. This charter review should happen, and we should move that and change it.
Okay. We are going to stick with you, Mr. Neary, on this one. One of the most important jobs as mayor is recommending city contracts for waste removal, streets, and other topics through the city council. Ideally, the lowest bid is the best choice, but that's not always the case. What factors would you consider when evaluating city contracts like trash, recycling, and infrastructure?
I think sometimes when you get low bid, and what I've learned over the 40 years I've been in business, and when you get low bid, that's what you get what you pay for. And I think it shouldn't be always low bid, but we should we should work with our contractors and be partners, but we also need to hold them accountable. And we have some contractors that have violated environmental laws, we've violated housing laws, and labor laws. And we shouldn't allow those people to work for the city of Omaha. The city of Omaha should be building an excellent contractor base, and they should be Omaha-based contractors that build a workforce, pay taxes here, and create wealth here in our city. And that's what I'll do as mayor.
Okay, Mayor Stothert, same question. What factors would you and do you consider when evaluating city contracts like trash, recycling, and infrastructure?
We are required by city charter, city code, to take the lowest and best bid. Lowest is objective, best is subjective. The city council has the ability to reject bids, and they have done that if they don't feel like it is the best bid. We have created a small emerging business program within our city that we have peeled off portions of our contracts to go to minority businesses. We have created a REACH program with the Greater Omaha Chamber that works with those smaller minority businesses to help them how to bid on a contract, how to get capital, how to run a good business. And I will say this, in 2020, that we awarded over $25 million worth of contracts to our small emerging businesses. So we have the ability to be a little more subjective, and if we don't feel like the contract is the best bid, and we have records, especially of our bigger companies and of our smaller businesses now that we are awarding contracts to, and we know their performance. And so I think that is just the way that the city has moved forward with these contracts, and we do have the ability to reject those bids if we feel like that they are not the best, because that is a subjective part of what we are required to do.
Okay, Mayor, we're going to keep with you for this next one. And as you know, over the last few weeks, we have seen multiple shootings at Westroads Mall. This is a mall where a lot of people from Omaha and even outside the community go. Do you have any concerns about the impacts of the Westroads Mall shootings, and do you think it's going to hurt the mall long term? And finally, how might you help the public feel safe there?
Well, there's been two, and yes, I'm concerned. I'm concerned with shootings over any place that there is in Omaha. Westroads Mall usually has a lot of people there, and that does concern me too. I have a meeting set up with Chief Schmatter, myself, and the manager of Westroads Mall, and we are going to see how we can work better as a partner, which we are with the mall, to guarantee that the people there are safe. They have mall security, but we want to offer what Omaha Police Department can do to help out and be a better partner there. But I will say this, Omaha is a safe place to be. From 2016 to 2019, we had a 30-year low in the number of shootings in Omaha. That is just unprecedented all over the country. So even though we had a small uptick in 2020, we think we will get back to pre-pandemic levels this year because our police can be reconcentrated on intervention.
Okay, Mr. Neary, I'll repeat the question for you. Do you have concerns about the impact of the Westroads Mall shootings? Do you think it's going to hurt the mall long term, and how might you help the public feel safe in the mall?
Yes, I'm very concerned about that. I believe that the Westroads Mall is the highest real estate taxpayer in Douglas County. It's a huge economic impact. We've already seen what's happened to the Oakview Mall and to other malls that have gone away. And so we need to get a handle on this, and we need to get a handle on the root problems of crime and get more mental health services in our city, and that's how we're going to make people feel safe, is by solving some of the root problems of crime and making people feel more safe at places like the Westroads.
Okay. Mr. Neary, we'll go first with you for this next one. We are in a strong mayor form of government here in Omaha, but the mayor still must work with the city council to get really anything done. So if you were elected, how would you work with the council while still accomplishing what you want to get done in City Hall?
I've spent 40 years in business bringing people together. I'm a broker. I get a buyer, a seller, a landlord, a tenant, and I've done it in other parts of business also. And if it's part of my part of my reputation on the planning board was getting things worked out, and between developers and neighborhood groups and opponents and proponents. And that's what I'll get done when I'm on the city council. I have no fear that I can sit down with people and work out a deal that I know will work for everybody. I've done it all my life, and I'll do it when I'm mayor.
Okay, Mayor Stothert, similar question for you. As you know, we're in the strong mayor form of government, but you have had to work with the city council to get things done in the past. So how would you, even going forward, continue to work with the council to accomplish your goals?
Sure, and I want to point out that Westroads, though at first, is not the highest taxpayer in Omaha. Village Point pays more and First National pays more too. But being a former city council member, I understand the importance of the relationship between the executive branch, which is the mayor, and the legislative branch, which is the city council. I would honestly say I don't think mayor-city council relations have been better than they are right now, because I know that there may be several issues that they don't agree with me on, and I work with them. I go down and I'll testify. I will work with them and explain what my position is. But even if there's several issues they don't agree with me on, there will be hundreds that they do. Being the executive branch, I cannot pass a law. I can recommend a law, but I need the city council and we need each other to work together to get things done. And we have gotten things done because we work together so well. And I will maintain that good relationship for the next 4 years.
Mr. Neary, did you want a 30-second rebuttal to respond to the Westroads tax issue?
The mayor may be right about, I knew it was, the Westroads was in the top 10.
Okay.
So if it's third or fourth, but it's a very high taxpayer to our community.
Okay.
And so it's a very important financial loss if things don't go right at the Westroads.
Sure. We're getting towards the end of the debate, so I have kind of a lighthearted question for you two. You both lived in the city of Omaha for a while, so my question to you is, and this is a 30-second response, we'll start with Mr. Neary. What is your favorite part about living in Omaha?
My favorite part about living in Omaha is the neighborhoods. We're a collection of our neighborhoods. And during this campaign, I've so much enjoyed knocking doors in every neighborhood in Omaha, whether it be far west Omaha, far north Omaha, streets that aren't paved all over, some all over, in different parts of the city. And I've really enjoyed talking to people, and everybody loves Omaha. Most everybody loves Omaha and wants it to be the great city it can be.
Okay, Mayor, 30 seconds on why you love Omaha.
It's the people. I moved up here about 27 years ago. I was living in southern Texas. The first day I got here, my kids were small. They were going in kindergarten and second grade. Went to the schools, looked around the city, and fell in love with it immediately. And I've loved Omaha ever since. We have a very great community that cares about each other, that works together, that in times of need and times of crisis, we come together. That's what I love about Omaha. I have had over 55 town hall meetings since I have been mayor. And the reason I do it is I want to go all over the city and I want to meet the people and I want to talk to them and listen to what their concerns are. So it's definitely the people in Omaha that make Omaha great.
Okay, we are at the end of the debate, but before we close out, we do have closing statements. Each of you will get a 60-second closing statement. We will start with Mayor Stothert.
Thank you very much for holding this tonight. Elections are about the future, and I am so excited about what has happened to Omaha, and I have a plan to make sure we continue to move forward and get it done. I have a plan that's listed on my website that we will address the pandemic. We will address sustainability. We will make sure our roads continue to be repaired. We will focus on my number one responsibility, public safety, keeping the citizens safe. We will continue with managing the city budget, making sure that taxpayers' money is spent wisely, economic development and job growth, and improving the taxpayer experience. Omaha has great motivation. We fared the pandemic very, very well. The motivation and the optimism is great, and I'm going to make sure that it stays in that direction. I'd really appreciate your vote on May 11th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Neary, closing statement.
Thank you, and thank you for hosting this event. Omaha needs change, and we need, on May 11th, you can either vote with status quo or change. And status quo is substandard housing and failed leadership on the COVID and a downtown that's lost 5 corporations during the last 8 years. Or you can vote for change. You can vote for change that somebody will solve the affordable housing crisis, somebody that will build a downtown that in our urban core that competes with the suburbs and builds a city and reconnects our city in all parts of the city where every kid from every neighborhood has an equal shot and that we can move our city forward to be the world-class city that we're meant to be. And that's what I'll do when I'm mayor, and I'd appreciate your vote on May 11th. Thank you for being here.